Call the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors, Member 13. All right, we'll call the order of the meeting of the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors for September 13th. It's 5:31, and if we'll get roll call, please.
Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day. Here. Supervisor Ayers. Here. Supervisor McDaniel.
Here.
Chairman Lyons.
Here. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years since the attack on the United States. So if we can have a moment of silence for all our fallen heroes and their families. Thank you. Now we'll have the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Per the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Executive Order 72, persons who have been fully vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus are not required to wear a mask. We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We will do our best to take citizen comments remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. To join by telephone, you may dial into one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise your hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you are calling in by phone. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. At this time, we have recognitions and introductions. Mr. Suter.
Yes, Mr. Chad Coffey is here with us this evening. He's been retained as Railroad's new director, and he started in August. He's a Buena Vista native, comes to us with a wealth of knowledge of youth sports and a lot of coaching experience. And he asked for a few minutes to just address the board, introduce himself, and just say hi and give a little update.
Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me here. Just first off, I'm so excited to be working in the area. Kind of hit the ground running with Railroad. Just an update, our fall sports are currently rolling. The last pretty much started tonight. The last of our startups is tonight. This fall, we have roughly 475 participants, of which 300 male, 175 female. The numbers are kind of on pace pre-COVID. Those numbers are on par with that. Also wanted to mention that on October the 2nd, Saturday, October the 2nd, it's from 11 to 2, Railroad will be hosting a Fall in Love with Railroad event, community event at Brubaker Complex. Just different games and activities, kind of a community thing to foster some interest. We're also going to kick off our winter sports registration that day. We'll have a survey available, just trying to get feedback and where we've been and how we can improve. Any questions?
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
I'm very
Appreciate it.
excited to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Citizen comments? Anyone signed up to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom or email?
Steve has that, I believe.
I don't see any raised hands. My side.
And we haven't had any email correspondence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, approval of the August 23rd, 2021 minutes. If everyone has had a chance to review them.
Motion to approve as presented.
Have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Mr. Bolster, county financial package.
Yes, sir. If you go to the financial package, you'll see that there's a memorandum that details the activities for the month. I'll start with the Commissioner of the Revenue. He is continuing to do the reconciliation of delinquent business tax reports. He's also in conjunction working on audits of Schedule Cs, meals, lodging, and business license taxes to ensure compliance. And is typical of every month doing the reconciliation of the DMV report with local records. And he's assisting property owners with their 2021 personal property bills. And I think I may have mentioned this previously, that the personal property tax book was presented to the treasurer, Mr. Votto, back in August. And then he's also working on the land use revalidations. Those are being prepared and will be mailed out at the end of this week, or on the 15th, so Wednesday. If there's no questions for Mr. Votto or Mr. Weitzel, I'll move on to the treasurer, Ms. Travato. She did send out the personal property tax bills on the 26th. And so a reminder for our citizens, those are due on October 5th. For folks that turn in estimated income, that's due on the 15th. So again, that's Wednesday. Letters that were dated June 21 that were related to severely delinquent real estate have a due date of September 15th. If those are not received, they will be sent forward in the process for consideration for auction. She's also working on a decree of sale to be held on, that was held on September 9th for 15 parcels. And then there's an additional auction that's scheduled for October 26th at 11 a.m. at the Rockbridge County Circuit Courtroom. Folks can also see that online simultaneously. There's a website that's presented in my memo. I'll just go ahead and read it. The website is https://bid.forsale@auction.biz/UI. And so again, that's for folks that want to view and take part via online platforms. And then debt set-off continues. So we've got about 10 filings that are expected to come back to the county at $2,365. And then last week they had the state auditors here for a few days. I don't have an update on how that went, but I presume it went just fine, as it usually does. There's no questions for Mr. Votto. We'll transition to the line chart that's presented in the financial package. You can see that the data is fairly consistent with what we had experienced in the previous 3 fiscal years. At this point, we were anticipating to be about $5,565,000 short. So this is the time of year where expenditures typically outpace revenues. And at this point, we are $5,138,208. So we were actually lower than what we anticipated. And so that's obviously a positive sign that we're being consistent with what has happened over the last 3 fiscal years. So if you have any questions, I can certainly do my best to answer them. If there's not, we can transition to the appropriation resolution. And so there's the first one I'll go ahead and address. It's under contracted services within the Commissioner of the Revenue. And that's related to our effort on the cigarette taxes. So we are going to go ahead and request an appropriation of $25,000 that's related to the purchase of stamps. And so that is something that we are in the process of working through as far as the procurement effort. But we want to go ahead and get that appropriated in conjunction with a future procurement effort and then the eventual purchase of stamps. The next few items are related to what was the COVID vaccination clinics over at the former People's Building. And so these are the last few sets of expenditures related to that. I did speak with Fire Rescue last week, and so they have submitted the grant documentation to FEMA. And so everything that's reflected both this year and last year is accounted for. And so hopefully we can, I don't have a timeline on when we anticipate FEMA to approve and then pass through funding to us, but it has been submitted to FEMA. So if there's no questions on the appropriation resolutions, I've got some notes on the bills list. There are 448. Well, let me go back. There is one more actually, the ARPA money. So back in June, we received $2,192, $192,271, $2,192,271 back in June. And so we are appropriating that in FY22 in anticipation for expending those dollars this fiscal year. Now going to the bills list, we have 448 invoices on the bills list. I've got some notes, and if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer those questions. If not, the recommendation is to approve the appropriation resolution as presented.
Okay, and any questions for Mr. Bolster? You've heard his request.
Motion to approve is presented.
Have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Ayer?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Mr. Bolster.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we have with us tonight the chair of the Rockbridge Regional Fair, and Ms. Janelle Vest is going to give us an update on the county fair that was held in Glasgow.
Thank you very much for having me. I just wanted to come in and again, thank you all for your support and for the county's support in helping our fair continue. As you all know, we did not get to have our 2020 fair, and we moved to a whole new location in 2021. So there was a lot of apprehension about how the event would go, what kind of attendance we might have. Obviously, weather is always a factor too that influences a lot of different things. It was hot, but we had otherwise beautiful weather. Our attendance was great. I don't have any exact numbers, but I've estimated somewhere between 4,500 and 5,500 people came over the 3 days. I've come up with that number based on the ride ticket sales. Going into our first night of the fair, we actually did twice as much business as we did in 2019 on opening night at the Horse Center. Friday night of the fair, where we were competing with the Rockbridge Perry McClure football game, we had within $100 of the same level of ride sales as we did in 2019 at the Horse Center. And then Saturday night, there were a lot of things going on all over the county. We were about $500 shy of our 2019 number. So we left there feeling really proud of what we've been able to accomplish. We were overwhelmed by the support from the town of Glasgow. They jumped in with both feet. They didn't hesitate to add really crazy ideas that caused them a lot of extra effort and work and time and expense, and had everything that they said they would do done well before the fair began. They've already started coming up with bigger ideas for next year and in the future. So I'm really excited to see what the fair will do being in a county location. As much as we loved all of the infrastructure that the Horse Center provided and the central location, one of the biggest comments that we got over the 3 days from people who came to the fair was that it really felt like a county fair. And we hope that as people get more comfortable being someplace else in the county, that it's just going to grow by leaps and bounds.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, Ms. Vest, you did an excellent job. I know you were out there probably 18 hours a day, and you and your board it is definitely a working board. Witnessed that, but
You work too, Dan.
Yeah, he didn't, Dan didn't just witness.
but it was a great site. The people of Glasgow were fantastic, and pretty much it was complaint free for the week. So
Was.
looking forward to more of you joining us next year on site at Glasgow and enjoying the fair. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Consideration of private ambulance operate in the county. Chief Ramsey.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have Andy Bowles and Matt Daniels with us tonight. I'll just kind of go over the agenda item and then kind of turn it over to Mr. Bowles and his team here. So as it was stated, sometime in late July, we were contacted by Mr. Bowles notifying us of their what they would like to do as far as a business for a private patient transport company. The company will focus on, the name of the company is going to be called Kiwi Emergency Medical Services. And it will be merging or joining, and I'll let them talk about that with first response medical training that you all are familiar with from Mr. Daniels' company that has done standbys in the county in the past. They're going to focus on non-emergent transports of patients from nursing homes, dialysis centers, and transports from our hospital here locally to places like Roanoke Memorial, UVA, things like that for folks that need a higher level of care. And with that being home to a dialysis center here in town, patients from their residence to the dialysis center, and then other scheduled appointments as they come up. In addition to that, they will continue the event standby portion of that, and also some the training piece of that, of providing CPR and first aid training as Matt has done in the past. And then also, in addition to those two things, requesting approval to do emergent 911 backup EMS here in the county, as stated in the agenda. One of the things to note, or a couple of things to note here, that Andy did present to the Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association on August 17th at the regular monthly meeting there, presented to that group. And after there was a couple of questions, comments, and things, and ultimately the group voted unanimously to recommend the approval of the company's startup. And the other part to that is being as part of the Virginia Office of EMS code that it requires any licensed agency to have a resolution on file from the local governing body where the agency is based that authorizes them to operate. So with that, I will turn it over to Andy and his team.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for letting us present to you our business plan and our business idea. I believe you've all had access to the presentation that I've sent in. I think the first thing I'd just like to do is a quick little sum up on myself. I think most of you know Matt or Matt's business. My background and association with Lexington is through the equestrian world. I first started coming to Lexington some 16 years ago to officiate at the Horse Centre. And in 2015, I took over the business from Brian and Penny Ross running the horse trials at the Horse Centre. We run 5 events there a year. Currently, historically, I've lived in Texas. We've just sold our Texas property and bought a farm in Rockbridge County, in Rockbridge Baths. So the plan is I'll be based here very soon, within the next couple of weeks. Kiwi Emergency Medical Services, as Nathan has said, our aim is predominantly to fill the void that's Rockbridge County is experiencing right now, and some of the surrounding counties in the non-emergency medical transport. It's happened for various reasons, but there is an issue, there's a need there now. And talking to the rest homes, the hospitals, there's not enough services around this general area. We're having ambulances come in from Stanton with priority, further afield as far as Richmond, I believe, are coming in to do some of the work. What we're looking to do is fourfold. Non-emergency medical transport will be our key business. Taking first response will come into our business and do the event medical business, mainly at the horse centre, but we've already been approached by some other county sporting organisations that are looking for some support. Training, as Mr. Ramsey said, we're going to look to training. We're looking at expanding that a little bit. One of the things that we're looking at doing is bringing a Pearson testing centre into Lexington. Currently, the closest testing centre to Lexington is in Roanoke. So people from the universities are having to go to Roanoke. So within our training building, we'll set up a Pearson testing centre, not only for the medical side, but for other testing that's required from some of the universities. The last part, and I take on from what Mr. Ramsey said about can we stage this approach, and I don't disagree with that, is to mirror what's happened with Carillion in the past. And that is, as and when we have some resources available and there is a spike in the county EMS, which happens globally. I come from an EMS background also in New Zealand. And one of the ways that we manage spikes is through this sort of arrangement, mutual aid. With that, it is purely when requested. And it's when you have a situation either at night where there's extra resources required from time to time. And this, talking to the fire chiefs and the EMS chiefs, this happens from time to time. But for me, as our business, it would be wrong for us to sit and be parked up with a paramedic when someone's calling for some help. That gives you a quick scenario. I'd like to just read very quickly a letter that's come from the Rockbridge Volunteer Fire and EMS Association to myself from Steve Reese, who's the Vice President, who's sitting in the back of the room. It reads, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for attending the meeting of the Rockbridge Volunteer Fire and EMS Association on August 17th, 2021. Your proposal to start an EMS transport agency in the local area is definitely needed. And we were certainly impressed with your presentation. Kiwi EMS will bring back something the local agencies have lost for the time now, and that's access to additional resources for local EMS calls. In years past, EMS agencies relied on Carillion patient transport for mutual aid when the need arose. With Carillion currently going through staffing crises, they have been unable to provide much, if any, support to the volunteer agencies. Your plan to offer your company's services on an as-needed basis for mutual aid will be a huge benefit to the local agencies. Not only with ambulance assistance, but your plan to offer medics and chase vehicles for additional support when requested. The association looks forward to working with you in the future for the betterment of EMS services in the local area. That was sent to me from that association. So where we are, open to questions if anyone has some questions of what we're looking at doing. I think, as my presentation says, and I briefly alluded, my equestrian background is one. My other background is 20 plus years in corporate transport management, plus a significant amount of EMS, both as a paramedic and volunteer and fleet management in New Zealand. Mr. Daniels, I think, as I said before, he's been long-standing in the community.
Questions? Just a statement. I don't know whether you know Michelle Watkins. She's here with us tonight, and she's in charge of rats and Rockbridge area transportation, and they're in need of stretcher transportation people, if I'm saying it correctly. So you might want to touch base with her
Absolutely.
so that we're not duplicating services in the community.
We look to add to your community, not try and duplicate.
Well, they're looking to add too, so you might want to add together rather than separately, I guess is my point. Are there any questions?
Where will you be based out of?
So we have a building in Magnolia Square, just up.
Dr. Robert Hall's complex there, right past East Lexington Bridge, we rented the property. The back building is actually above the old Dabney Center and Vermont Education Center.
So your unit will be set apart there.
We have a building there that has a training area as well as place for our crews.
You bill directly to insurance companies?
Correct. And what we have said and agreed is that if we do any mutual aid, unlike Carillion where they build the extra 20%, we would only bill to the insurance companies and waive the 20% to the Rockbridge County residents.
Do you project, I mean, a lot of our citizens, especially in nursing homes, don't have income for co-pays or anything like that. So are you projecting to write that off?
Most nursing home transports, they get what's called an authorization prior to the transport. So the insurance is actually agreed to pay for that transport.
And how many vehicles do you have?
So
Transport vehicles?
currently we have 3. That will depend on the workload. We've been approached by one of the other local hospitals. So I think the number will probably be somewhere around 5. We don't intend to be a massive organization, but I think it'll be somewhere around 5 is where we'll end up.
Any other questions? Any discussion?
So your plan does not depend on the emergency side of this.
Absolutely not. For me, that's more a moral and ethical side, that if I don't want to have an ambulance sitting there and someone calling for some advanced care if we have that there. But certainly from a business point of view, it does not depend on that.
What size staff?
Envisage. So if we're running 5 ambulances, I envisage that one of those will be 24/7. So that will require 8 people on a shift basis. And then the other 4, one will be a 7-day a week. 3 of them will be Monday to Friday because a lot of the work is Monday to Friday. So somewhere between 16 and 20 staff.
Not directly to you, but to either Chief Ramsey or Mr. Suter. This won't be a Rockbridge agency, correct? So there'll be no allotment, no county funds. And I know they talked about mutual aid, but they won't be dispatched through 911, correct?
Not as it's currently shown. In order, Ms. Huffman reminded me today, and of course I've been out for a little bit, but she reminded me today that our county ordinance would have to change to have another transport group as an official member of the safety plan. Correct. So there would have to be something, there would have to be another step. There would have to be the county's official safety plan is what it's called by state code, would need to be amended.
Remind me, I think you've told me this once before. If this is for non-emergency only, if it is, why are they a part of our, because it's in our county, that they are part of our safety plan? If this is a private business providing non-emergency care, explain to me one more time why we have to change an ordinance for that.
We wouldn't if you're looking solely at non-emergency transport and private business. However, if it goes the step further for emergency response as being called out by the 911 center as part of our public safety plan, that part of it would require them to be named under the ordinance.
And that's the staging that Chief Ramsey was speaking of, correct?
And that's what we think is a smart plan. So
What about the legal and liability issues associated with that? I mean, if they're not a county agency, why would we be dispatching? I mean, a citizen could call them directly and request their services. No need to go through our 911 system.
For non-emergency.
But why would we, I realize there may be instances where our EMS is overwhelmed. I get that. But if they're not county employees or not county agency, why would we dispatch them? Why would we take on that legal and liability issue?
Well, for example, when we started in the I guess combination service where we supplemented with career staff, it was with life care. This was life care. Yeah. Life care. So we had a contract with them that spelled out everything that was required of them. So that took care of the liability, that type of thing. And we had a contract with them. So I would anticipate that you need to do something similar.
If you intend to request their services for emergency. As it is, it's non-emergency, so you don't have to do that, correct?
Correct.
The proposed resolution that you have just covers patient transport and providing event coverage for emergency services. It does, nothing that you've been presented includes authorization for providing backup emergency rescue calls.
And we can't do that tonight anyway, right?
That's correct. You need to give us authorization to proceed with amendment of code.
So what we can do tonight is approve I believe everyone has a copy of the resolution that would allow for transport and event services. Sure, you can ask. I'm just.
If this is approved for your transports of non-emergency, when will you be able to start?
we're looking at mid-November.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, then I'll be happy to entertain any motions, if there are any.
I move we approve the resolution as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
COVID update from Good evening. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. Well, cases are rising, as you probably all heard. So we've had a sharp rise in cases since early July. This is nationwide, statewide, and countywide. Cases peaked in January at about 3,200 daily. They dropped by July 5th, and we had like 195 daily hospitalizations. On September 9th, we're back up to 2,200 patients hospitalized daily. So got a 2-month increase in hospitalizations, just over 1,000%, and new cases are up 1,200%.
Sir, we are talking statewide, just to be clear.
Statewide, yes, ma'am.
okay.
Yes, ma'am. That is of those cases, about 0.4% of the new cases are breakthrough cases. Fully vaccinated rate of hospitalizations is 0.16%, and fully vaccinated rate of deaths in the state is 0.10%. So the vaccines clearly keep the seriousness of the both the number of positive cases as well as the seriousness of it down. Rockbridge Korean Community Hospital reports very similar numbers regarding unvaccinated persons being admitted to the hospital. Most of those are immunocompromised. They also report that they're running near capacity daily, have postponed some elective surgeries because of the increase of patients that they have. They're seeing about 5 to 7 inpatient COVID cases per day, and the ER is pretty inconsistent, but it's somewhere around 2 to 10. Most days, 20 some patients in the ER at a time. One time last Friday, it was a little over 40 patients in the hospital. They also reported that this is the last month has been the most active month that they've had throughout the whole pandemic as far as cases in the hospital. Some of that's probably because earlier when the cases were so high, they had stopped a lot of their procedures. So that had some of the numbers down, and most everything they were seeing were emergent. Vaccinations, the Virginia vaccination rate of adult populations around 65%. Rockbridge County nearly mirrors that at 63.3%. The county rate of 12 plus age group is a little less at 61.8%.
I'm sorry, 12 above is 60 is what percentage?
61.8%. Now that's counting 12 through all adult. So that
Okay, so
when you add the
can't
12 years old, it lowers the percentage just a little bit.
Correct. So do you have the numbers for the 12 to 18 or high school age kids?
I believe the 12 plus. I don't believe that was broken down in the dashboard. It had the 12 plus added to the general population, but not the exact 12 plus numbers. I can try to investigate that and send you an email if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're still offering vaccinations. We gave over 14,000 at the Peebles Center, and since then we've still been giving vaccines when people request them. It's much lower numbers now. We're doing them, anywhere from 2 to 20 at a time. The Horse Center reached out to us a couple weeks ago. They were having trouble getting their staff vaccinated, so we offered to come on site, and that actually got like 15 of their employees. So it seems like the more convenient you can make it, the better it is, and the more participants you get. We're still in the middle of that. All of the Pfizer's there have had second doses. Moderna finishes up next week. VDH is still offering every Tuesday from 9 until 6 here in Rockbridge, and Tuesdays and Fridays, those times at the Government Center in Augusta. Rockbridge Area Health still offers. So the vaccines are available. It's just getting the last people convinced to get vaccines. That's the data I have. Do anyone have any more questions?
So you didn't have any breakdown in youth, how many young people were in the hospital by age?
That number is even less than they're included in that overall that was in tens of percents and thousands of percents, but not exact numbers. If I can find
It's
those
okay.
somewhere, I'll send those to you as well. But most of the cases are the Delta variant is a less age group than what the regular variant was, but it's still 18 plus is the biggest number of cases and the most serious cases, and unvaccinated are the biggest majority of those.
Can you review, and you might not be able to tonight, review the protocols, the most current protocols? If you have a definite exposure, or if you have COVID, what's the latest recommendation on how people are supposed
Absolutely. There's two different sets. One is for vaccinated and one is for non-vaccinated. If you have an exposure and you are vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine. It's recommended that you're tested from day 3 to 5 and you wear a mask for 14 days. If anytime during that 14 days you become symptomatic, then you're to be tested and start either your isolation or your quarantine, depending on if that comes back positive or negative. If you're not vaccinated and you have an exposure, no sooner than day 5, you're to be tested and start your quarantine immediately, but no sooner than day 5 be tested. And there's two different standards. The gold standard is 14 days quarantine. If that's not possible and you get a negative test after the day 5 test, that negative test comes back at day 7 if you've been symptom free for less than 24 hours or for the last 24 hours, then you can come out of quarantine. Isolation hasn't changed throughout the time. It's 10 days from your positive test if you're non-symptomatic. If you're symptomatic, it's 10 days from the first symptoms, and that 10th day has to be no symptoms for the last 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Clearly, he doesn't know what he's talking about. To run that off that quick, that's impressive.
Any other questions?
So currently we're at capacity in our hospital.
Near
Near
capacity,
capacity.
most days is what Mr. Matson said.
And we have stopped doing some.
He said postponed. Some of the elective surgeries have been postponed for up to a couple weeks. It's not like before that they were postponed for great periods of time, but they have started delaying some of them is how he.
What happens if someone gets in a car accident, or what happens to us, our community right now in terms of our hospital?
They go to the ER as they would have before.
Able
And
to do that,
Mhm.
not overwhelmed.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And what is the capacity of the hospital? It's not a huge number.
I don't know that, but luckily we got someone here who probably does. Steve, do you have the capacity? No. I can. I don't know that number.
I'm going to say 20. There's not a lot of hospital
Yeah.
beds. Yeah.
They have the ability to upstage the old OR, but Mr. Matson said they don't have staff to do that.
Right.
So even if they needed to do that, they don't have staff right now to do that.
I guess my point is, while there might be almost that capacity, that's not a huge number.
Right. Are the hospitals in our general area, or are they, it's similar situation?
Augustus increasing as well. Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'll get that information to you
Thank you, sir.
tomorrow.
Mr. Suter,
Yes.
ARP funds for broadband?
Yes. So as the board's aware, the Commonwealth.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, could I make a statement before we start on that one?
Absolutely.
I abstain from all matters, discussions, or voting related to the use of ARPA funding for broadband grant match and approval of the commitment agreement with Park and Rent My disclosure statement required under Virginia Code 2.23115 paren F in paren is on file with the clerk to the board of Supervisors.
Okay, so as you all are aware from board package and various conversations I've had with you, the Commonwealth has dedicated $750 million to assist rural localities, mainly rural localities, in achieving universal broadband accessibility for residents and businesses. And as with past initiatives, the funding will be distributed via competitive grant through the Virginia Telecommunications Initiatives, or VATI. So over the past month, we've worked, I've talked with the board, I've worked with the EDA, BARC, BARC Connects, Rockbridge Area Network Authority, Dominion Energy, and more recently in the past several weeks, the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission. And we were identifying areas which do not have access to at least 25 down, 3 up meg internet speeds yet. And we did put together a grant application. It's still, the final tweaks are being made now. I've looked at it or looked at some tweaks right before came down to the board meeting. And that grant would compete with grant applications from many other rural Virginia localities. One of our biggest challenges was identifying unserved areas. Federal broadband coverage maps are not at all accurate. We've done our best to find those areas given the available information that we have. We eliminated areas served by RANA and BARC Connects, and we also sought information from other providers as possible, to include Comcast. We got a little bit of information from Comcast in the 11th hour, and we're able to make a couple tweaks. Ultimately, we propose to apply for 13 BARC project areas and 1 RANA project area. These are in every magisterial district in the county, so each one of your magisterial districts. And I'm just going to list off some names. I don't have the addresses or anything in front of me, but work would include areas in and around Brownsburg, Vesuvius, Stewartsburg, the Conrock area out 60, Old Farm Road, Stillhouse Road, Spring Valley, Effinger, Thornhill Road, Buffalo Creek, Mechanicsville, and Forge Road area, unserved, and Arnold's Valley, the upper end of Arnold's Valley. It's not served by the Comcast, and a pretty large swath from about Falling Springs Road south on 11 in the Natural Bridge corridor there. That was Dominion coverage area that BARC proposes to expand into with this project. Using information from the Virginia Broadband Commission, we anticipate that at least a 45% match will be required for the award. In total, the grant request for the projects would total more than 276 miles of new fiber and the potential to serve over 2,300 new locations. Total cost of the combined projects is just under $21,734,000. BARC proposes to provide a match of $8,918,575 up to. And I'm asking the board to approve the use of the ARPA funds in the amount of $1,964,250 as local matching funds. Thus, the total request to leverage for the VATI grant would be $10,850,750. As noted in your package, if awarded, the funding would flow to the county from the state, and then along with the county match to the EDA for distribution to BARC and RANA to complete these projects, subject to basic performance agreements that would need to be drafted upon grant award. The schedule for completion, if awarded, is anticipated to range from about 14 months for the RANA project to 17 months for the BARC projects. That time frame includes the make ready, the engineering, construction, and customer sign up. BARC has experience in initial take rates in the areas that they've done of about 50% with ever increasing numbers as time passes in the areas where they provide fiber. The grant request includes estimates to take fiber to the door in project areas. Included in your agenda package is a commitment agreement, which the board would need to approve if in favor of this. Our project team's putting together the finishing touches on the grant, as I noticed, or as I noted earlier. And it needs to be submitted by the end of day tomorrow. Should the board approve, I would also include a letter of commitment in the grant. I actually found out today, again, I've been on vacation. I found out today that the document in your package is not an absolute requirement for the grant application. It can go in draft form, but if awarded, that document that you see would need to be executed. So if you approved it, you only have to approve it this one time. All they need is a letter of commitment from the county that says the county would be committing funds. And I'd also like to take the opportunity now to express deep thanks to Rana, Bark, the EDA, the CS, Central Planning District Commission for their hard work on this over the past few weeks. It's been a bear to pull all this together. So my final recommendation is to consider the request to dedicate up to $1,964,250 of ARPA funds toward the universal broadband expansion to leverage Bark's commitment of up to $8,918,575, and if awarded, another $10,850,750 in body grant funds.
Any questions
Sorry
for
for
Mr.
that
Suter?
So if the grant is not approved, the ARPA funds would not be used, correct?
Correct. We would have to punt and figure out something else. I mean, the potential exists that you could come back and work something else out to try to leverage some of these projects if the board wanted to do that. I feel pretty good about this grant. It's $750 million out there. This county has done a good job with Rana and Bark getting broadband out there, so we don't have as huge a project overall to get finished up as a lot of counties do. I will say that I know that we're going to miss some areas with the mapping that we have to work with. It's very difficult to ascertain exactly where you don't have coverage. So this is our putting our best foot forward. But to answer your question, we would have to punt and come back and see what else.
When will we know?
This fall, I'm anticipating. Don't hold me to it, but mid to late October is what I mean. Keep in mind the Broadband Commission and body has a lot of these applications that they're going to have to wade through. So, and a certain amount of money to spend. So no promises, but that's just my guess.
And so the objective is for trying to get 100% coverage of the county to have adequate internet speeds.
To have access to broadband. You know, and 25.3, that's the bar that's been set. I will say that both Rana and Bark, you know, with fiber, can offer packages. I mean, I think Bark's minimum package is 50 down, 10 up for $60 a month. So that's far and above what the bar that the state has set at 25.3.
And I know that other service providers, they bid on areas and they, I guess once they have the area, it's limited competition for them. What about the providers that may have an area but are not providing 25.3 service?
Well, it just all depends on who you ask. If sometimes they say they provide it, but anecdotally, we know they don't. So we've tried to include some of those areas. We did exclude areas as much as we could called RDOF areas. I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's a federal auction program where an ISP, an internet service provider, will bid on a census block, and they will go into that census block, and they say, with federal dollars and our commitment, the ISP's commitment, they will provide service, minimum service, 25/3 service. So we tried to exclude those areas. That's part of the grant application. We have to show those areas, the RDOF areas. So yeah, I mean, we're doing the best we can, figuring out where they are. But there will be other grant application or grant opportunities, I'm sure, coming along from the federal government. There may be more from the state, don't know. But this was the best we could put together, given the limitations that we had.
And if a citizen is not in one of the areas that we're trying to improve, and they're not, whichever provider they have, they're not obtaining those speeds, what's the best course of action for them to take?
Couple things. One, the best course of action to start with is to beat on their carrier and just say, look, you say that you provide these speeds, let me see them. I'd like to have those speeds. The other thing too is, and this has happened over and over, that folks contact RANA and BARC, which are two of our biggest providers as far as fiber goes, and they've asked to be included in the next round, so that they keep a pretty much running list of where and that's where part of this came from. Stillhouse, places like that. There's Vesuvius, places that we know people are not getting service because we've heard from them.
Any other questions?
And we could well be challenged on some of these areas. What the way this will work is the application goes in, it's publicly, public document. The other ISPs can challenge and say, well, no, we already provide service in that area. And then at that point, they're going to have to prove that they do.
To the minimum standard. Because I'm fine with the application. I'm fine. I appreciate all your hard work. My concern is that we're still missing people because they have a provider that's not providing adequate service.
I've got the same concern.
You've heard Mr. Suter's request.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve the resolution. Do we have a second? And a second? Any further discussion? Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Day? Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Mr. Suter.
Thank you.
Ms. Huffman?
Sir.
Policy for the Board of Supervisors meetings?
This agenda item comes as a result of the upcoming expiration of the continuity of government ordinance. It will expire by its terms on October 5th. The declared state of emergency and disaster remains in effect, but with the release of most restrictions, normal county operations and meetings have resumed for the most part. But the board does have the option of readopting the continuity of government ordinance in order to maintain flexibility if it's needed in the future. You've had a report on the COVID numbers, and of course that can raise concerns about what we may have in store. So you can allow the ordinance to expire and adopt it at a later date also, if that would be your preference. Giving some thought to decisions the board needs to make if you are not going to readopt the continuity of government ordinance. I gave you a series of questions to consider in terms of holding your meetings in the future with the ability to live stream and have Zoom meetings and public participation electronically. What would the board like to do if you're not going to continue with the status quo?
Comments?
I'd like to continue with the status quo for a few more months through this problem.
Any other comments?
Is the status quo a restriction on the number of people who can attend the meeting?
There's currently, the board currently has no restrictions in place on numbers of attendance, but it would allow you to limit those numbers at a later time should it become necessary.
And it doesn't have any mask requirements or anything like that for anybody joining the meeting?
Not currently.
Well, I mean, we have the recommendation that if they're not vaccinated, they should wear a mask, correct?
It's
I
a
mean, that's
recommendation, not a mandate.
But by continuing, we have the ability, if we're exposed or have issues, to still Zoom in. And our constituents, I mean, they might not want to come out for the next few months. So if we don't continue, don't we then have to make all these other decisions about how we want to conduct our business? And I think for me, it just seems like an easier path to continue through this period of time.
So is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
We have a motion to,
Do you need, are you trying to stop us here?
Not at all.
Okay.
Your motion, just to clarify, is to advertise the continuity of government ordinance for a public hearing at your next meeting.
Perfect.
all right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll say.
And a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Huffman, we got you up again.
Yes, sir. This is related to the opioid litigation. Another case, this one is in bankruptcy. The Mallinckrodt Company, who is an opioid manufacturer and one of the defendants, in face of their opioid related liabilities, they filed for bankruptcy. A good bit of time, I think, after the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy, but Purdue Pharma had some complications, which the board has been briefed on previously. This one has been fairly straightforward. Their estate is what it is. There's no withdrawal of funds from the bankruptcy estate to where the owners need to make contribution back into it. So the amount available in the bankruptcy estate is 1.6 billion. Of that, 125 billion will be allocated to public claimants. Virginia's share is 28.5 million. That money will be divided among the various localities in Virginia based on the recent MOU signed with the Attorney General's office, which you all approved at a fairly recent meeting. So the localities in Virginia will receive 11 million out of that. And that may be spent in the locality's discretion with the caveat that the expenditures must be broadly related to opioid abatement. Localities will also be eligible for an additional 13 to 14 million allocated for award through the Opioid Abatement Authority. And one of the outstanding items is that the time period for payment of the funds is not yet finalized. So outside counsel has recommended that their locality clients authorize them to vote to approve the plan before the voting deadline of September 17th. And so this item is to request the board's authorization for outside counsel to cast Rockbridge County's vote in favor of the plan.
Questions for Ms. Huff? You've heard the request.
I move we approve as presented.
We have a motion to approve the request. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Ms. Huffman.
Thank you.
Has everyone had the opportunity to review the monthly staff reports? So do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve with appreciation.
A motion to approve with appreciation. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Board comments. I'd like to announce that Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors will hold a special called meeting on Monday, September 20th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. for a multi-jurisdictional meeting at the Virginia Horse Center located at 487 Maury River Road in Lexington. I hope to see everyone there. We'll get some presentations and maybe a little fellowship. So any other comments?
Mr. Chair, we went over it earlier, but just to add to your comments about the fair, since it was in my district, I thought it was a great turnout, great event. I was able to make it down 2 different days to it, and a lot of positive comments from the people who were there. So and I know you serve on the fair board, so thank you. And to
I'm
rest
the
of board.
liaison.
Well, the rest of the board, thank you as well. Look forward to hopefully having it there again and improving upon an already good picture.
The plans are to return to Glasgow, and the dates will be set as soon as we can get a commitment from the ride company.
The other comment or question I had was in reference to the item we just discussed about supervisor meetings. Fine with the moving ahead as we did, but in my mind, the live streaming of the meetings, the taking of questions remotely, regardless of pandemic or not, should be something that we continue on with. It provides more accessibility to our citizens, provides them more avenues to be a part of our meetings. So I'm not sure how we need to, if we choose to, how we would address that moving forward, just to make that part of our meetings outside of an extending ordinance or.
I agree. That'll be something Ms. Huffman will have to guide us through.
Yes.
Any other comments? And this meeting will be continued until September 16th at 5 p.m. for the joint meeting with the school board at Maury River Middle School. Please remember, masks are required to go into a school building. So bring your mask with you, please. All right, thank you, everyone.